There it was clear as daylight. A white Bentley Continental just lounging in front of my barn doors like it owned the place like it was auditioning for the cover of a magazine called Rich People Who've Never Heard of Manure. You ever seen something so ridiculous you start to question reality? That was me, staring out at this pristine luxury car sitting smack in the path where my cows walk every morning. And, after 38 years of farming, your patience for nonsense gets real short, real fast. So I did what any self-respecting countryman with a trusty Massey Ferguson and a thick skin for HOA bull would do: scooped that Bentley up and plopped it right on top of my steaming manure pile, nice and high, like some kind of modern art tribute to karma. She screamed, oh. She screamed. I mean, if lungs could throw furniture, mine would have been bolted down, you know what I mean? And honestly, with the racket she made, you'd think I'd just run over her entire bloodline. Not her precious British car with a license plate that actually read HOA 1 Queen. Yeah, that happened. Anyway, name's Gordon Bellamy, but folks around Timber Hollow Ridge just call me Gordy. My family's been farming these 14 acres since long before Zillow started deciding which colors are neutral, and most of my neighbors grew up minding their business until Cherise Lockhart arrived, dragging a suitcase full of designer heels and even more opinions. Now, Cherise, oh boy, if you've never met an HOA president who considers a barn an eyesore, count your blessings. She shows up 2 years back with her husband, who I'm pretty sure breeds purse dogs for sport, and she starts her own little crusade to uplift Timber Hollow. First thing she targets is barns. Yes, actual barns like the ones you need to have a farm. She writes letters so strongly worded, I had to double-check the return address to make sure it wasn't from the White House telling me my barn's compromising neighborhood equity or the hay bales are an organic threat to uniformity. She even wanted to limit tractor visibility to an hour before dawn. Imagine that, running a farm on vampire hours. At first, I tried to let it roll off my back because, life's too short to fight every battle, and my family survived droughts, tornadoes, and one memorable outbreak of goat yoga. But then Cherise escalates to a full-on parking war. Every Saturday, that Bentley shows up in front of my barn, angled like she's trying to block out the sun. I call the HOA board, but it's like shouting into a bucket. I leave notes. She rips them up and staples them to cucumbers, leaving them in my mailbox. No, I still don't get the metaphor. Then one day, she's out there on my hay bales with her poodles, staging a country chic photo shoot, sipping something with a tiny umbrella, posting about civilizing the wilds. That's when I said enough's enough. I set up a motion sensor camera, and sure enough, caught her blocking my livestock entrance, latte in hand, car sideways, right as I'm trying to move cattle. When I finally called her out, she filed a complaint saying I'd trapped her Bentley with hostile corn. That's not a joke. Corn. Luckily, my cousin's husband is the sheriff, and when he saw the footage, he laughed so hard he almost needed CPR. He told me, you can tow it, move it, or plant sunflowers in it for all the law cares, just get it out of the way. So, next time she parked it, I did just that, only with a bit of country flair. I'll never forget how that car looked, gleaming on top of the compost pile with the morning sun bouncing off the chrome, two poodles watching in what I swear was silent applause. When Cherise finally arrived, her face went from faux English to deep-fried Southern in about 3 seconds. "This is terrorism," she screamed. "Agricultural terrorism." She called 911, fingers flying so fast I thought her manicure would catch fire. The dispatcher, who happens to be my neighbor's kid, just calmly asks, "Ma'am, your car is on top of the pile of what now?" 15 minutes later, here comes the sheriff, straight face on, but his eyes are screaming, "Don't laugh." He says, "Ma'am, you've been trespassing and blocking agricultural access. That's a crime. Moving your car might be unconventional, but it's legal." I pulled out every photo, every security cam angle, even the no parking sign she'd ripped out and thrown in my pond last week. The sheriff basically told her to knock it off or get fined. So what does she do? She stands under her own car, screaming threats up at it like it might sprout wheels and drive itself home. You ever watch a crowd grow on social media? Word gets around fast in Timber Hollow. By sundown, half the town's out front, taking pictures, calling it modern art, and even my goats seemed entertained. The HOA scrambled to call an emergency meeting. That night, people came out of the woodwork, Martha with photos of Charisse finding her over an American flag, Tom with a $50 pumpkin violation, Sarah with a $75 penalty for her kids' chalk drawings. And then the bomb drops. Turns out Charisse was using HOA funds for her private landscaper, pushing everyone to buy overpriced beige paint from her brother-in-law. The vote to remove her as president? 6-1. The one was Charisse, who insisted on voting for herself, which I gotta respect for the confidence, if not the sense. They banned her from setting foot on my property and handed her a formal trespass notice. But oh, the plot thickens. The sheriff handed out citations, trespassing, filing a false report, obstruction fines totaling $4,800. She tried to plead poverty, but the judge just raised an eyebrow and reminded her she drove a Bentley and owned a pool shaped like a swan. When she filed an insurance claim for the car, the adjuster, after sniffing the Bentley's new eau de manure interior, denied the whole thing, said she'd assumed the risk by parking illegally and leaving it there for hours. Repairs, $12,000 out of pocket. Still not done. She drags me into small claims court. Judge watches the footage, sees the trespass orders, reads the sheriff's report, and rules in my favor, plus makes her pay my legal fees. Says I showed remarkable restraint, not towing her car to the next county. And just when you think it's over, here comes the State Department of Agriculture, swinging a $15,000 fine and a cease and desist for interfering with farm operations. That woman's face cycled through every shade of red, then landed somewhere in the realm of ghostly gray. So what did I learn? Sometimes you just got to pick up the shovel literally and figuratively and stand up for what's right, even if it means turning a luxury car into a compost hopper. And honestly, I sleep just fine knowing the only thing that ever really got buried here was her sense of entitlement. But hey, here's the real question: was I right to fight back? Or did I take it too far? Where's the line between justice and petty revenge in a place where the cows outnumber the Karens? I want to hear your stories if you ever stood up to a bully, HOA or otherwise. Drop a comment, share your wildest neighbor feud, and let's see whose modern art wins the day. You'd think that after the court, the fines, and that now infamous Bentley on a compost photo making the rounds, Charisse would have packed up her poodles and moved someplace where the only livestock are garden gnomes, right? Y'all know such luck. Turns out, folks like her don't just disappear. She laid low for about a month, and honestly, Timber Hollow Ridge was the quietest it had been since the one time our 4th of July fireworks set off Old Man Patterson's scarecrow and half the town came running with buckets. It almost felt peaceful. My cows started coming in on time, my mailbox stopped growing weird vegetables, and the air just seemed lighter. But you knew there'd be but just as spring was rolling in and the smell of lilacs started to outmuscle the compost. I noticed a black SUV cruising real slow past my property. New faces, sunglasses, city plates. Next thing I know, there's a glossy flyer in my mailbox, all bold fonts and pastel colors, talking about exciting development opportunities. Timber Hollow Estates Phase 2. I nearly spit out my coffee. Guess whose picture on the back? All smiles, holding a miniature schnauzer and a blueprint? That's right, Charisse, now rebranded as Community Ambassador. Let me back up a sec. This was no regular HOA drama anymore. Charisse had pulled strings with her husband's developer buddies, pitching to turn the neighboring pasture land that's belonged to the Jenkins family for over a century into some kind of luxury eco-village. That's a real thing, apparently. And instead of fighting with me over barns, she decided to go bigger. Overnight, Timber Hollow turned from a place where nothing much happened into the next battleground between old roots and new money. People started showing up at town hall meetings I didn't even know lived in town. Surveyors tramped through the woods. poking around fence lines that had stood longer than most marriages around here. The Jenkinses, who'd kept to themselves since before I was born, suddenly had lawyers sniffing around their property line, talking about eminent domain and easements. And right in the middle of it all, Charisse, all smiles and charity bake sales, acting like she was doing us a favor. One morning, I spotted her at the local feed store, holding court with some city guy in a suit so shiny he reflected the light off the birdseed bags. She caught my eye, gave me that smile people use when they're trying to sell you something you already own. "Morning, Gordon," she said. "I hope there's no hard feelings. Progress is coming, whether we like it or not, you know." I swear for a second, I almost laughed. The nerve. But what really caught me off guard wasn't Charisse, it was old Mrs. Jenkins, tiny as a bird, standing right behind her with a set to her jaw I hadn't seen since the tornado of '99. She leaned in and whispered, "Don't you worry, Gordy. We're not letting our land go without a fight." Something about the way she said it, quiet but solid, made me think maybe the old guard wasn't done just yet. Fast forward a week down meeting night. The place is packed, tension thick enough you could bail it. The developers pitching their vision, talking walkable neighborhoods, yoga studios, gourmet coffee, all the things you can't feed a cow or pay your mortgage with. Then Mrs. Jenkins stands up, voice shaking, but Clearan drops the bomb. She reveals the land is locked up in a family trust, untouchable for any sale, and she's got all the paperwork to prove it. Whole crowd erupts cheers, clapping, a few tears. Charisse's developer pals look like they swallowed a bucket of nails. But that wasn't even the best part. Turns out, one of the city boys surveying the land? He's Jenkins' grandson, back from college, posing as an intern to catch the developers trying to fudge the property lines. The real kicker? He's got drone footage showing Charisse's poodles running loose and digging holes in what was supposed to be protected wetland. So much for eco-friendly. By the end of that meeting, the whole Phase 2 project went up in smoke. The Jenkinses got a standing ovation. Charisse slipped out the back, sunglasses on even though it was night. Someone taped a printout of the Bentley compost photo to her car window for old time's sake. These days, Timber Hollow Ridge is back to its old self, barns standing proud, tractors doing tractor things, and the only flyers in my mailbox are for the county fair. Sometimes I still spot that Bentley cruising by, but it never stops. And every once in a while, I see Mrs. Jenkins out on her porch, waving as the sun sets, like a queen surveying her land. Reminds me, some things are worth protecting, no matter how loud the outsiders get. So let's settle this. Friends, where do you draw the line between progress and preservation? Would you fight to keep your roots? Or would you sell out for a piece of the future? Tell me your story. Who's got the wildest neighbor feud or HOA nightmare? Drop it in the comments. And if you ever need tips on relocating a Bentley, well, you know who to call.